Welcome back to another episode of the Better Than I Found It podcast. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor University and the host of the podcast. Really excited about my guest today. It's a current PGA Tour member named Ryan Blaum, who I've known since he was in high school. I recruited him when I was a young assistant coach at Oklahoma State. He ended up playing at Duke and was a first-team All-American. And Ryan's played pro golf for 15 consecutive years now. And he's actually preparing right now for his finals of the Korn Ferry Tour later this fall. And he is also experiencing some struggles with COVID and the vaccine. And he talks about that. But Ryan mainly talks about his faith and his family and how they have helped him through a lot of really tough times. He's been a journeyman for a long, long time in pro golf, and he's still chasing that dream, which I find really inspiring. Hope you enjoy the listening. Ryan Blaum. Welcome back to another episode of the Better Than I Found It podcast. This is Mike McGraw, and my guest today is a longtime friend of mine, acquaintance, and somebody I've known literally since the recruiting process, Ryan Blaum, PGA Tour player Ryan Blaum. Ryan, welcome today.
Coach, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's good to catch up with you. I think I've really only seen you since you were in college, probably 3 or 4 times when I've been down in Florida recruiting. But I have a lot I want to hit on today and talk about. You're really one of my favorite PGA Tour players, and a lot of people don't know that but I do follow you from afar. I've watched your results and have really enjoyed watching you through the years.
Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
You. Yeah, it's been quite a ride, and hoping to keep the ride going as long as I can.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to kind of get across to my viewers, my listeners. We've had a lot of PGA Tour players, a lot of Korn Ferry Tour players, some mini tour players on here, and talk about, we will eventually today talk about the fact you are a journeyman. You've been out there fighting this and doing a good job of fighting it for 15 years since you graduated from college. So I want to get to that, get to how you've been able to accomplish playing professional golf for that long, and what you've done has been amazing. So, but before we get there, I want to talk about when we met. So I was an assistant coach to Mike Holder at Oklahoma State, and we were trying to find anybody that we could get. Now, by the way, you're not going to know this, but you're one of 7 kids with the first name Ryan in a 2.5-year period that we didn't sign. 7 kids named Ryan did not come to Oklahoma State. So I did learn a valuable lesson. When recruiting a kid named Ryan, be very, very cautious and careful.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah, you were one of 7, 2.5 years. That's unbelievable. But so I didn't know about you. I didn't know a thing about you. You were just minding your own business in Coral Gables, Florida, correct?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And I show up for the Junior Orange Bowl, and I'm on the practice tee and watching kids warm up for the round. I saw your golf swing, and I thought, that's a nice golf swing. Looked at your name on the deal. Young kid, I think you were only 15, maybe 16, but you were not.
I played that tournament 3 or 4 times. So yeah. It could have been young.
You weren't a senior in high school. I can tell you that. You were younger than that. And so I went out and watched you play several holes on the front 9. I thought, that's a good golf swing. I circled your name, and I thought, okay, this evening when Mike Holder is asking me, what players did you see today? I've got a good one scouted, and I don't think anybody knows a thing about it. So I'm on the practice tee after the round, and I see somebody get out of the range drag and pull a basket of balls over and starts filling up piles on the range for the kids who are practicing. And it's you. I thought, wait a second. I thought that was the guy that played golf this morning. So tell me about that. You're filling up the range baskets, competing in the Junior Orange Bowl.
Yeah, well, first, if I was 15 or 16, it also means that you're watching a kid that was about 103 pounds, maybe getting to 5'1" at the time. I was a late bloomer. I still grew 2 inches in college.
Yeah.
So I was a very small statured kid. But the Biltmore Golf Course in Coral Gables, Florida is where I learned the game, where my dad took me when I was 2 years old, where I started hitting balls lefty because I saw my dad hitting righty and I had the mirror image going. Mm-hmm. And So it was always from age 2 to I went to college. It's where I practiced every single day. And once I kind of became good enough, and obviously I knew everyone at the golf course. It's a public course, but in the back of the range, they had a good practice tee, and it was always off grass. And being a public course, they're off mats quite a bit. And so I tried to work out some sort of deal with them, where I would be able to go to the back and hit balls off the grass, and because I felt like the mats just weren't going to make me a better player. And they said, yeah, sure, you just got to do this, pick, whether it's pick the range or hit balls from, there's number, it used to be 18 back in the day, went alongside the range. Like, you got to hit balls back onto the range that have gone off the range, and do this, 2-3 times a week, and we'll let you go hit balls back there. So that's what I was doing. Like, didn't really matter if the tournament was happening or not. They needed help, and I was going to do it. I just wanted a place to practice.
Well, when I saw that, it confused me to begin with. But then I went in the golf shop, and I think the head pro is a guy named Jason
Epstein.
Jason Epstein. And Jason told me, oh, yeah, that's Ryan Blaum. He works out here, I guess, for the free golf and certainly to use the practice tee. Mm-hmm. And so I got on the phone immediately with Mikkel. I said, I got the guy. I said, he's about 5'0", 100 and nothing, but he works on the driving range so he can play free golf and hit balls. And he said, oh, that sounds like our kind of guy. That's great. Okay. So we'll get back to that story in a minute. I wanted to introduce that part of it because that does play into it. So yeah. You mentioned your dad. Your dad was a great athlete. He played college football and played professional football. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I know he had a big influence on you competitively, and your brother Brent as well, as far as making you guys get into athletics. But I'll never forget this. I used to do this military push-up that really pretty much nobody else could do. Yeah, oh yeah, completely extended. Anybody that knew me back in the day understands that push-up. And really only about 2 or 3 guys have ever been able to do it. Your dad did 15 of them on your visit at Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, well, I'm in the wrong league here. Tell me about your dad's influence on you.
Major influence. I mean, just the last story about picking balls to hit for free golf. That's a major part of his influence. I had to earn it. I had to want it. He never forced me to go play golf. Growing up in Miami, it's very easy to get burnt out from the game, just because you can play 365 days a year. The weather's perfect. So he also encouraged me to play other sports. I played a couple other sports all throughout high school. But that little microcosm of a little story of that story, like, we could afford to pay to play golf, right? And I could afford to wear a glove probably, when I grew up playing. But my dad said, like, if you want to wear a glove, that's kind of an added expense. Like, if you want to wear a glove when you play, you got to buy it yourself. So I started wearing a glove when I was 17. So, like, I think it was my senior year of high school, and it was just because I had accrued enough pro shop credit from the weekly games at the course to pay for gloves. I didn't want it to actually come out of my own cash, my own money that I was making on the side or whatever. I wanted it to come out of just pro shop credit. So that's how I got my first gloves when I was 17, with pro shop credit from gambling games on the weekends. He allowed me to fall in love with the game, and I appreciate that, because he, like you said, he played football, so you can kind of imagine a football guy being a little intense. He has that persona, no doubt, but he also is a gentle father, and showed me how to love something and how to work hard at something. And those are characteristics that I owe to him.
Well, that's great to hear. I did a podcast episode 2 or 3 weeks ago about earning it, talked about how my dad asked me to earn things when I was a young boy and how I thought it was very valuable. I think it's just as valid today. Now I realize a young junior golfer trying to play a national schedule couldn't work enough and make enough money to finance an entire, schedule of playing junior tournaments. But there's value still in letting a kid earn something. I think that's amazing your dad did that. But I still have this image of a kid picking up range balls playing in the tournament. I just love that.
Yeah. I want to share one thing, and I think we'll probably end up coming back to it. But since I was 4 years old, I played my first tournament when I was 4, and I think ever since my very first tournament, all throughout junior golf, he had me kind of recite this on the car ride to each tournament in junior golf. What are your goals today? And my goals it was always the same. And today I still feel this way about the game of golf. I think it could be criticized, but I think it's been very valuable to me. Goal 1 is to have fun. Goal 2 is to make friends. So nowadays that'd be more like relationships around you, right? But as a junior golf, you're trying to make friends. That's one of the reasons why you play. And then goal 3 is to win. And I think because winning wasn't number 1, it was still very important and very what I wanted to do. My zeal was there. It was very strong, but I think that's what allowed me to have a love for the game, for the natural components of the game, and rather just a love for winning. I still love to win and I hate to lose, but that stuff can kind of come naturally when you have the other 2 components.
Were you aware that your dad's wisdom was something you'd carry with you to age 37? I mean, that's...
Oh, of course not.
Of course not, but that's great that he was able to do that for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, thank you for telling that story. We went through that recruiting process, and pretty much it was just me emailing you or keeping in touch with you. Mike Holder, he was never going to see you hit a golf shot. So eventually I talked him into making an offer to you, and eventually the visit to Stillwater. Mm-hmm. And I have a lot of memories of that visit. Do you have any memories of that visit?
I remember being a kid from Miami, going to a little town of Stillwater and thinking, man, I don't know if I can do this. This is kind of out there. And then trying to find food one night. And I think we got recommended I think it was after a football game or something. It's like, well, the Chili's might still be open. I'm like, we just got a Chili's. I'm like, you just got a Chili's? What are you talking about? You just got a Chili's.
Wait, that was a big deal to get a Chili's, because we didn't have a big restaurant like that. That was, so I knew it was a little bit out of your wheelhouse. Now, you did have me do something that I don't think I'd ever done on a visit. You had me find a church for you and your dad to go to. I thought that was really cool. And so on our way to the airport, we stopped and went to church that morning.
Right. I remember that. Mm-hmm.
And then, and I remember Mike Holder, I think he met you at breakfast one of the mornings, and he challenged you pretty good and said a few things that were Mike was a pretty tough dude now. And I don't know if that scares you away, if it was a good thing or bad thing, but 3 days after your visit, 9/11 happened. And I always felt like that probably sealed the deal, that there was no way you were coming to Oklahoma State. Just, getting that far away from home, there was so much uncertainty. But so do you have any other memories about that visit other than the food?
Well, the good side of the food, I remember the training table dinner, and I remember, I grew up in a house where my dad doesn't eat red meat. And so we cooked pretty much 99% of the time. And so we didn't really eat a whole lot of red meat growing up. And so this is almost a tough admission. That was actually the first filet mignon I've ever had.
That was it?
That was my first filet.
Okay.
I'd had like a strip steak,
sure,
before. But I think like previously that summer at the US Junior was maybe one of the first steaks I'd had at the banquet. So I was very new to red meat. Well, the fillets were like these 4 6-ounce fillets at the training table. And so they looked really tiny to me. So I grabbed 2 of them. thinking, well, these are just really small stakes. And I remember like just looking around, hoping people weren't judging me, other players, because I couldn't finish both my stakes. And because I got through like the first one, I'm like, man, this is like heavy. I don't know if I can finish the second one. So I do remember that part, that dinner.
I didn't realize we opened your world up to the world of red meat. I didn't realize that happened.
Hey, I love red meat now.
So. Yeah, there you go. But I really do remember after taking you guys to the airport, and then 2 days later, 9/11 hit, and then that was kind of, you ended up committing to Duke. And let's talk about your experience at Duke, because you were a first team All-American there. You guys had a really good team. That I know your senior year, you guys were top 10 at the national championship, and you had some good players. What do you think is the most significant thing you got out of your experience at Duke? I mean, what did college golf give you?
It's hard to talk about my college experience without first talking about Coach Myers. Coach Rod Myers, the kind of guy that, we kind of would say that if you looked up the word gentleman in the dictionary, there'd be a picture of him there. Unfortunately, he passed away. I was the last player to graduate underneath him. He passed away the following spring from a blood condition that morphed into an acute leukemia. But it's hard. Let's see how I can word this with Coach Myers. I'm not going to do an eloquent enough job talking about him to reach, the character level that he was. He made us better men, and that was his daily goal. The golf side and the academic side were obviously there, and they were important. But when we were out to dinner, I remember the little things about him. When we were out to dinner, he would treat the waitress like his best friend, like someone that he really respected, treated everyone with the utmost respect. And I don't do as good a job as he did, that's for sure. But I always think about him when I'm in certain circumstances like that. Or I think about him when I'm doing a practice round at a tour event, and there's volunteers out at practice rounds, and there's no one out there, but they're just sitting there standing a post essentially off a green. And I try to thank them for being out there. They're actually spending money to volunteer time, and they make the tournaments possible. So Coachy was unbelievable. I was glad and fortunate to be able to get his first ACC championship my junior year, be a part of that. He had been there for 35 years and hadn't won one. So to get one for Coachy was probably my most fond memory golf-wise at Duke. We had a couple good years my junior and senior year of NCAAs, but winning ACCs my junior year was the highlight for sure.
Yeah, I believe the last tournament that he ever won as a coach, I believe, was Olympia Fields. I'm not sure. Do you remember that event?
That was probably the fall after I graduated. So yeah.
Okay, that was the fall after. Yeah, that's when it was. That I remember that event. He was very emotional there. He was sick at the time, and so I think he probably knew he wasn't going to be coaching going forward. And I remember they won that tournament at Olympia Fields, and I remember how emotional he was. Yeah. Great guy. And he was also really big with the USGA in rules. So he was promoting the game through being a rules official and promoting that part of the game. But he was a great coach, and he did it for a long, long time. Glad you had a great experience with him.
Yeah. And he was an Ohio native, so he had some Jack Nicklaus stories being around the same age. And I think because of his conversations with other players and his association with the USGA being a rules official, he understood the professional game a little bit too. Maybe more so than a lot of college coaches, even though he hadn't had the stable of players that have gone to the PGA Tour, he still knew the pro game. And I think was able to offer advice to me as I made that transition. Obviously for just a short amount of time, but before we lost him, but I thought that was pretty valuable. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know how much like college coaches nowadays prepare their players for the professional level, for the next level, or if it's just a focus on just, hey, I'm going to make the best team possible, and when they leave, when the player leaves, they'll figure it out. I don't know the mindset of coaches nowadays, but that's what I saw in Coach Myers. He was getting me ready for life, and when life was about to start for real, like real life. So I owe a lot to him, and he's always going to have a special place in my heart for him.
I love hearing that. I'm obviously a longtime college coach, and I feel like relationships should be lifelong. And so I think that while the kids don't always understand the decisions you make as a coach, you hope that at some point they realize everything you're trying to do is to get them ready to go out and live life, hopefully a life on the PGA Tour, because that's their dream, but also just kind of getting them prepared for anything else that may come up down the pike. So
Totally.
you graduated in spring of 2005, correct?
2006.
Six. And so you turned pro right away?
I did. I played a little amateur golf that summer, but I turned pro kind of the end of the summer, early fall.
So without getting into every single detail, let's do some highlights. Talk about your career, because I gave you a tab earlier. I don't know if it's fair, but I called you a journeyman because you've been playing the game professionally at a lot of levels, mini tour level, Korn Ferry level, PGA Tour level. You've had status on all those in those areas, but you've played a long, long time, 15 years. Mm-hmm. So hit some highlights. Tell me about, pro golf for you, and then get us up to where you are right now, getting ready to go to tour school.
Yeah. So fun fact, I have never been to final stage of Q school. I think my first 6 years as a pro, I'm not sure on the stats, but I think I got to second stage at least 5 out of those 6 years. And my first year, I eagled 17 of the final round of second stage of Q school, and then doubled 18 to miss it by 2. It was an interesting first couple of years of mini tour golf. A few years into it, I decided to go over to Europe and do European Tour Q school. I had some success on the mini tours, won a handful of times, was able to finance my golf that way because I didn't have any sponsors or whatnot, and got a couple spots into tour events, finished 14th in one. So that was a good paycheck that can basically supply a whole year of golf.
Right.
But went over to Europe, won first stage by 5 shots, won second stage by 4 shots, go to final stage, which is, you basically go directly from second to final stage over there. And night before the first round, I go to the bathroom and my urine is 100% blood. I don't know what's going on. But I played the 6 rounds. I'm by myself in Spain. I'm eating Snickers bars on the course, like just one after another to maintain energy. I'm low on energy. I end up coming back home. I made the cut at final stage, which means you at least have challenge tour status over there. I come back and I find out that I have strep throat and mono, and it's a really acute version of it for some reason. You can get it from the food and water in Spain and Portugal, and spending some time over there, it seems like that's what happened. I just started dating my wife at the time too, and we ended up dating for 6 months and we're engaged for 6 months. We just kind of, when you know kind of situation. And, but it ended up, the reason why I'm bringing up this mono story is that it ended up taking 3 years to completely get over it. I had an acute version for 13 months. And then, as anyone that's had mono knows, that once you are done with it, you're still not 100%. It takes almost whatever length of time you had it. It takes that amount of time to fully recover and get back to 100%. And that was a 3 years that almost feel like taken away from me. I remember saying when I was 33, well, I'm really 30 because I had 3 years of mono, so, but I went over, and part of the problem was that I thought I was recovered, and I went over to Europe, and I was excited about having status. And so I tried to play. I tried to play while sick, and it's not a good idea. So it prolonged it. And that's what a main catalyst of why it took so long. So I have a pretty poor playing experience over in Europe for a year and a half or so. And come back, play mini tours for another couple of years. I have twice won an event where I thought it was my last event if I didn't play well, because money was gone. I won the Waterloo Open, which is a 2-day event in Iowa in 2012, where the winner makes 60 grand. It's a big payday for such a small event. But I only had, $500-600 in the account at the time. 2013, play Latin America tour. Got off to a poor start. First 5 events really did nothing. Won the 5th or 6th event, the 6th event, I think, and ended up going on a tear the rest of that year and winning the Order of Merit, which granted me full status on the web.com, now Corn Ferry Tour, which is why I didn't go to Q school that year, because Q school was only going to the web.com, and I was granted full status. So that's why I didn't have to go to final stage. Then 3 years on the web, and 5 years on the PGA Tour. So I am on my 3rd passport, playing every country in Europe and every country in South America, and then just trying to play where I'll get a start. My first pro event was actually the Dunhill in Europe. So I was willing to go over there very early on. And man, now we're here.
I could interview 100 guys and nobody's going to have that exact story, not even close.
Nope.
That's crazy. I honestly didn't know all of that. I remember not seeing your name for a bit, but really didn't know why. I guess, you just lose track of people when you're living your own life and doing what you're doing. So thank you for giving me that sort of timeline. That gets us to where we are today, which is, you're getting ready to go to tour school in about 6 weeks, but again, not 100%. Talk to me about the pandemic life and how it's actually affected your career, because it's a little different.
Well, the pandemic has certainly affected the professional side of my career, and undoubtedly the personal as well. But to be honest, that's not the toughest thing that I've gone through in the last 2 years. The end of 19 season, the last event, I injured my hand, wrist, and didn't require surgery, but it required time off. And it was a really uncertain amount of time off that I was going to need to take. At first, it was like, oh, take 3 weeks off, you'd be okay. Well, 6 months later, I still hadn't returned to the game. I was hoping to return the week after the Players in 2020. Well, the week of the Players in 2020 is when the tour shut down. So I had just been out for 6 months, and then golf is taken away.
Right.
So then another 3 months go by. So I'm at 9 months, 10 months now. I'm playing out of the 126 to 150 category, which is a tough category to play out of anyway. But now everyone is wanting to play tournaments because everyone had just been forced to take time off in the mad dash to the end of the season. So now I'm not getting events. Throw in there that in the middle, towards the end of the time off of golf from the pandemic. So in June, our first baby boy, our son, was born. And he's actually a Texas baby. We adopted him. He was born in Texas. And so now if you take that date and go back 2 years, it was a 2-year process of adoption. That was a heck of a roller coaster, worth every minute and of every day and every stress that went with it. But I would be lying if I said it didn't affect me on the course a little bit, because it just, stress is stress. And whether it's good stress or bad stress, it affects you. And I think that was something that I was going through in the midst of an injury and a pandemic. Fast forward a few months, we had been eyeing moving back to North Carolina. We always kind of felt like it was home. And we, for some reason, decided we didn't have enough on our plate and decided to move to North Carolina. So now we have injury, pandemic, new kid, our first kid. So we're first time parents. So we don't know anything about anything really.
Of course.
And now we're trying to pick up and move during the pandemic as well. So it's been an interesting couple of years or so, to say the least.
Well, that does sound fairly interesting, but I called you a journeyman earlier, so you've been through a lot anyway, in your career to keep on playing and competing. And it's hard to go from sort of, you're going well and then you have a stop, and then you're going well and then you have a stop, or you have some disappointment over long periods of time. But everybody has their own way of dealing with these types of stresses and disappointments in life. What's the most important thing that gets you through from one to the next, or why you still have incredible enthusiasm and love for the game? What's the most important thing?
Well, it's undoubtedly my spiritual life, my relationship with Jesus Christ. Going back to college, it was the biggest season of growth that I had as a person. Going to Duke, I had people in my ear saying, "Oh, you're going to lose your golf game. You're going to lose your golf game." So freshman year, I decided to do something that helped my golf game, but was stupid for me as a person. I would wake up in the morning, I would skip class, and I'd go to the course and practice.
You skip class? You can't admit that.
Well, I am admitting it because I paid the consequences for it. I promise. I skipped class. I'd go to the course and practice. I'd go eat lunch, and then I'd go back to the course and practice with the team. Now, I was ACC Rookie of the Year my freshman year. I had a great year. My golf game was great, but I didn't get to play half the events in the spring because I was on academic probation because my GPA was about a 1.0. So I had to talk to some professors to let me rewrite some papers just so I could stay in school. And then it was around that time, you might remember that I actually thought about for the second time coming to Oklahoma State.
I remember that.
But here comes my dad again. Here comes a conversation with my dad, Ryan. And I remember I'm crying. I'm thinking I'm going to leave school and I just failed miserably here. And he said, "Ryan, do you feel like you've given it everything you've got?" And I was like, "Well, no." He said, "Well, then you're not going to quit, are you?" "No, I'm not." Leaving would have felt like quitting. And so I learned a lot of lessons my freshman year. I was able to find a good church my freshman year and have someone that discipled me well on really truly learning the Bible and what the Word says. And something that I learned the hard way is that there's three aspects to college that you can be successful at. There's, as a golfer, there's golf. So there's your sport, there's academics, and there's social life. Now, spiritual life is intertwined in all of these three things. It's not just a compartment that you work on your spiritual life, right? But what I learned in college was that I can be successful at two of them, or I can be somewhat mediocre at all three. So if I was going to choose to take my social life, put that on the back burner, then I can succeed at academics and golf. And I put my head down and I got to work. And my last 3 years of college, I had a good academic GPA, which still didn't really quite get me out of that big hole that I dug freshman year, but it was something respectable. And then golf flourished, and then eventually we learned how to have the social life and spend time with friends and figure that out. But that's where the foundation, like I was already a believer going into college. And I knew who Jesus was, and Jesus was in control of my life, but it's where I learned really the adaptation of taking that and applying it to everything, not just from a mental in my head standpoint. And that has been the cornerstone of everything that I do, from my marriage, my relationship with Ashley. It's huge in relationships in general, but obviously in marriage, it's magnified 1,000 times. And it applies to how I approach the day, how I'm going to work out, how I'm going to practice everything. That's where my perspective comes from, and that's how you stay. I'm able to kind of stay hungry because God has given me this gift, and I'm going to use it until He has taken it away or has taken away my zeal for it, my desire for it, and has placed something different on my heart to do.
I love hearing that, and I also love the fact that you've remained true to that, despite all the adversity. It's never. You probably have fallen off the track a couple of times, but you're always right back on because of your faith. It's a guiding light for you. That's wonderful. But right now you're experiencing something a little bit like that too, because we mentioned the pandemic, but there's the vaccination, and you didn't have such a good experience with that. So, and I'm not against vaccinations. I am fully vaccinated, but you didn't have a good experience. Talk about that.
Yeah, I'm not against them either. I just think that everyone needs to make the right choice for themselves. Everyone's different, but yeah, so I was unvaccinated throughout the whole season, and the tour was testing, and I never caught COVID. I was lucky enough for that. I don't think it was, my family and I have been very safe and tried to be as safe as possible with it, and just try to let our own immune system fight it if we did get it. However, the testing policies on the tour changed once I had to go to Korn Ferry finals. It went from not testing at all at the end of the season to testing only the unvaccinated. And that being the case, I thought the Korn Ferry finals were important enough to make sure that I wouldn't miss it, because you cannot miss one of those events. And we saw actually a guy that was, I think, 27th or 28th going into the last event, and tested positive and couldn't play the last event to get his card. And that was the type of scenario that I was hoping to avoid. So I got the vaccine. Unfortunately, I had some sort of reaction to it, or it lowered my immune system to where I caught something else. The actual facts are a little unclear because it's just hard to gauge. But long story short, 7 weeks later, I still am having energy issues and trying to recover. And I'm not sure how long it will take, but fortunately, I have a little bit of time right now to be at home and with my family and have my home gym and just kind of try to build back.
Yeah, so you're a little under energy right now, not where you normally are, but you've got 6 weeks before the tour school. So talk about what you think preparation will be like between now and that 6-week period, and the enthusiasm you have to go and win that thing.
Yeah. So my plan right now, and plans change. That's what happens to plans most of the time. But my plan right now is to take 2 weeks off completely to golf, and just work out. So every day, do a good workout. We don't have a car in our garage. We just have, basically looks like a CrossFit type gym. Looks like Rogue Fitness kind of threw up in there. And favorite room in the house still. But that's where I'm going to live for the next 2 weeks, and just kind of increasing mobility and getting the body as right as I can. Back to eating proper. Now that I'm home, that's one of the tough things about road life on tour, is eating properly. But 2 weeks off, and then 4 weeks of a gradual build into second stage of Q school, and in terms of golf. And that's kind of the plan. I think 4 weeks is plenty of time to fully prepare, and I needed a little bit break to kind of get the body healthy. So.
Well, I like hearing somebody who still has a plan. I mean, you're not going about this just willy-nilly. You've got an idea and how you'd like to go toward it, taking a very professional approach, but you are a professional. Why wouldn't you do that, right?
Well, I did say plans change. You know, I told you 2 weeks off of golf, and I'm day 5 into it, and I have the itch to go practice. So I mean, it kind of shows that my desire is still there, which is good. And we'll see if I make it the whole 2 weeks or not.
Well, regardless, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in 6 weeks at the tour school and just continue going. You know, I didn't know all of this story before today. I kind of knew bits and pieces. Mm-hmm. So it's really good for me to hear all of it because it gives me even that much higher level of respect for you and what you've been through and how your faith has guided all of those decisions as you come along. So we want to wish you the best of luck in 6 weeks and going forward. But I also want to end on something I like to ask a lot of players, because you're chasing a dream and you've been living a dream, you know, professional golf for a long time. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of kids that we recruit and a lot of young kids who listen to this podcast that want to do the same thing. They want to play college golf and then they want to go play professional golf. So if you had one piece of advice, and if you've got 2 or 3, that's fine, but one piece of advice you think would help every young player that aspires to be a college player and then a PGA Tour professional, that you think they couldn't live without, or you think would be valuable to any of them, what would that be? That's sometimes a hard question, but might not just be one thing.
Fall in love with the process. It's easy to fall in love with results, and you can then start playing for the wrong reasons almost if you are falling in love with the results too much. If you fall in love with the process, and what I mean by that is, let's say you have a goal, your goal is to win, right? Or your goal is to get better. Well, how do you get better? I mean, like, or if your goal is to hit 70% of greens this next season, well, that's a great goal, but how do you do it? Well, there's a process to doing that. And it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of sacrifices. So if you can fall in love with almost what I call embracing the suck, mm-hmm. Like there's part of it that's like, hey, I don't really feel like practicing right now. But I know that if I do this for just 20 minutes, if I do this putting drill, if I do this wedge drill for 20 minutes, I'm going to be better tomorrow. And, you know, a lot of guys talk about getting, 1% better. Well, if you fall in love with the process, even if it's just 0.01% better that day, it's still better. And I think falling in love with the process will allow you to fall in love with the game over and over and over again. And that will feed your desire to then go out there and win. And that would be my advice.
I love that. And I really love it because it exudes enthusiasm. I mean, all the time, which is something I preach all the time. If you don't love what you're doing, the chances are you're not going to be all that good at it. So regardless of what success or failures you've had in your career, you've loved it all along and you've enjoyed it. So That's great advice for young kids. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for spending, just about 45 minutes or 50 minutes with me today. I love your story. And I think a lot of my listeners are going to be watching Tour School in about 6 weeks to see how you do. So
always a pleasure to talk to you, Coach.
You bet. Well, thanks a lot and good luck going forward.
All right. All the best in the fall.